Hi, I'm Krista Cloutier from The Working Artist. I decided to film this from my bedroom, which is actually an old stone cave, because this isn't a presentation, it's not a pitch, it's a story. And I wanted to tell it from somewhere quiet, somewhere soft, because I think that's what we're all craving right now. A few weeks ago, I shared the 10 steps to working as an artist, and the response surprised me. Artists wrote saying things like, "This is exactly what I needed. This finally makes sense." And they asked, "Can we go deeper?" So that's what I want to do today, but not as theory and not as another training that you watch and then you forget. This is a conversation, one that I hope offers real value in a moment when so many of us feel overwhelmed. The world feels heavy right now. Most artists I speak with are anxious, uncertain, and distracted by what's happening, not because they don't care, but because they care deeply. And that's why we need spaces like this to pause and reflect and to remember what matters. Also, to remember that we're not alone. We recently held a welcome salon inside the Working Artist Academy, and the one word that I heard again and again was community. In a time when so much feels fractured, that gathering reminded me of something simple but true. We are not meant to walk this path by ourselves. So today I want to return to the heart of the 10 steps to working as an artist, not in a linear way, but in a deeper one. Not as a list, but as a spiral. Because these aren't steps you just check off. They're places that you return to again and again. And each time you do, you see more, you understand more, you become more. And I want to start where most artists get stopped, which is step one, claiming that you are an artist. That first step sounds simple, but it's not, because this is so rare. So many artists, even talented and accomplished ones, get stuck. I worked with a professional artist not long ago. She was making good work, getting some attention, but she couldn't break through to the next level. And when I asked her about being an artist, she said, "I don't like that word. It sounds show-offy and big-headed. It's not for me to say, it's for other people to say." And right there, I saw the ceiling that stopped her. She was waiting for permission. So now let me tell you the story of an artist who never waited for permission. A sculptor named Luis Jimenez. When Luis was just starting out, a local gallerist took a gamble and gave him a space in a two-person exhibition. This was a big deal. A real gallery, a real opportunity. But even that big gallery couldn't contain Luis. The gallerist had wanted a two-person show. Luis wanted a one-man show. The gallerist refused. Well, the deadline for the delivery of the artwork came and went. No work, no Luis. He wouldn't even answer the phone. The day of the show arrived. No work, no Luis. The gallerist was beside herself. Doors opened, guests arrived, everyone poured into the other artist gallery, and the party began. And that's when Luis stormed in, a roll of butcher paper under his arm. He went into the empty gallery that was supposed to be his space. He tore off a sheet of butcher paper. He sat on the floor and he drew. He signed the drawing and cast it aside, and someone snatched it up. Luis ripped off another sheet. Now everyone was interested in what this crazy artist was doing on the floor. They began streaming in, surrounding him. Then they started fighting for the work. He couldn't draw fast enough. Now the gallerist, who had been panicking an hour earlier, was suddenly clutching fistfuls of checks and credit cards. The next day, all of Luis's sculptures and prints arrived, and sight unseen, his show had already sold out. It was the start of an illustrious career. Now, I am not telling you to behave like Luis. His wild spirit would eventually cost him professionally. He paid a price for being difficult. And I worked with him for years, and God bless him, he was a pain in the ass. But here's what he understood. He wasn't waiting for anyone to decide if he was artist enough. He wasn't asking permission. He wasn't apologizing. He claimed it. And the world responded. So here's a question that I want you to sit with, not as a self-improvement exercise, just as truth. Where are you still waiting? For a gallery to choose you, for an institution to validate you, for a sale to prove you, for your parents to finally get it. You don't need to fix it today. Just notice it, because waiting for validation is exhausting and it keeps you small. Step 2 is setting your course. Now, most artists think that they need a 5-year plan. You don't. What you need is orientation. When I started art school, studying under Bill Jay, I knew what I wanted. I wanted to write, to teach, and to make photographs. And Bill Jay told me that if I got my degree in the history of photography, I could do all three, which I did. But then life seemed to have other plans. After graduation, I took an internship at an art studio. Within a year, I was running it as director. I stopped writing. I stopped making my own photographs. Life just got too busy. I told myself to consider it as an apprenticeship. I was learning the art business. I was working with amazing artists. I was building something. And I was. But after 10 years of making and selling other people's art, I knew I had lost my way. Then, on my birthday, a package arrived, and inside was a framed photograph and a note from a friend that said, "This is work by an artist who shows great talent, and I think it's someone you should pay attention to." And the photograph was one that I had taken years before. My friend was right, but I didn't know what to do or how to find my way back. Well, a few days later, I was having coffee with another friend, and he was complaining about his job when he said, "God, I wish I could just sell everything I own and move to the south of France." But something inside of me whispered, "Follow this." I remembered a tiny village in France where I'd studied at art school years before. It was the last place that I had felt truly creative. There had been an American artist living there. I wondered how he'd done it. I couldn't remember his name. But that afternoon, flipping through an art magazine, I turned the page and my heart stopped, because there was an article about Dan Adele, the very artist I'd just been thinking about, the one from that small French village. The universe was speaking. So I jumped, quit my job, sold everything I owned. I took a huge leap of faith. And I'm speaking to you today from my bedroom in that tiny French village. And Dan Adele has become a dear friend. Here's what I learned. Bill Jay was right all those years ago. Today I am a writer, a teacher, and a photographer, all the things he promised me. But I'm doing it in ways now that I never could have imagined back then. These platforms didn't even exist. And those years I spent lost in the art business, I wasn't wasting time. I was gathering the knowledge and context that would make everything I do now possible. The path wasn't straight, but it was coherent. And that's the secret to setting your course. You don't need to know the whole journey. Forget about what's possible or not. You just need to know your orientation. What do you want most from your artist life? Not how, just what. That is your North Star. And when you wander too far from it, and you will, life will whisper. It could be a photograph, a conversation, a magazine article appearing at exactly the right moment. Pay attention to the whispers each time you hear, "Follow this." Those whispers are not pulling you off of your path. They're showing you the way back. So let's skip to step 4, because this is the part that grounds everything else. Craft. Craft is not about being perfect. It's about relationship with your materials, your process, and yourself. I worked with the artist James Turrell for, about 10 years. James works with land and light, and I personally think he's a genius, a modern-day Da Vinci. He told me that he never intended to be an artist. He was a farm kid, lucky enough to go to college, where he decided to study psychology. In the 1960s and 70s, professors showed slides on projectors, but James said that the images on the screen didn't interest him. He was fascinated by the beam of light coming from the projector. It captured all of the dust in the air, and he wondered what else it could do. So he started playing with it, studying it, learning the physics of it. Over time, he became a master of his craft and one of the world's greatest light artists, even winning the MacArthur Genius Award. That is craft. Noticing what everyone else ignores, wondering, what else can this do? And here's what I see constantly. When artists feel lost or blocked, the answer is almost never try harder. It's almost always return to craft. Craft is where pleasure lives, where time disappears, where comparisons quiets down. It asks one question: are you paying attention? Because the more you try to make work for the market, the less alive it becomes, and the market responds to aliveness. Craft is how aliveness enters the work. Step 5. Now something important happens. Voice. Voice is not something you invent. It's not something you're missing. Voice emerges from the work. Let me go back to James Turrell for a minute. His fascination with light didn't really begin in those psychology classrooms. You see, James was raised in the Quaker religion. Quakers believe that light is a metaphor for God. James told me that every time he went to church, his grandmother would urge him to seek the light. She was talking about the light within. When James discovered that he could make art with light, he realized this was his message. His light works are spiritual in nature, not just scientific. Do you see what happened there? The craft came first, the obsession with the beam, the mastery of physics, but the voice was already there waiting. It came from his grandmother's words, from something deeper than technique. Voice is what you bring to your craft. And here's what I want to say. So many artists make honest work and then freeze when they're asked about it. They say, I want my art to speak for itself, or I don't really know what it's about. And I understand why you'd want to protect the mystery, but silence doesn't create mystery. It creates distance. Voice helps people stay with the work, not by explaining everything, but by offering enough truth that someone can recognize that they're in the presence of a real human being. Voice is alignment. It's the feeling of this person is being honest. Now I'm going to skip to step 7 because we have to talk about the part that makes artists collapse inward: failure. Most artists don't experience failure as information. They experience it as an identity verdict. A show doesn't sell, my work isn't good. An application is rejected, my work isn't good. An email goes unanswered, my work isn't good. And over time, that interpretation becomes really heavy. Every artist I've mentioned today has experienced failure. And here's the truth: the bigger the art career, the bigger the failures. Let's talk about artist Vic Muniz. If you don't know his work, look him up. There's an Oscar-nominated documentary about him called Wasteland that you're going to love. Now, Vic never planned to be an artist. He was working in advertising in Brazil when he got shot during a party, shot in the ass to be specific. The settlement money from that shooting brought him to America, where he met a new group of friends, and they introduced him to art. That literal failure, getting shot in the ass, redirected his entire life, and today he's one of the world's top exhibiting artists. And Vic told me something that changed how I think about success. He said, I see success as the times I failed to fail. Success is the times I failed to fail. I love that. Vic stands tall on his failures. He doesn't have time for shame. And here's what I want to say to you: none of us do. Shame and creativity, they make a lethal cocktail. So be very, very careful about drinking it. Failure in the art world is not a referendum on your worth. It's feedback from a very complex system. And here's the reframe: failure is data, not destiny. Got it? Step 8, persistence. Now, persistence gets a bad reputation. People think it means grinding, forcing, pushing, but that's not what I mean. Persistence is about staying in relationship with your work, especially when the world goes quiet. Artists don't stop because they run out of ideas. They stop because they lose meaning. They stop because they feel invisible or foolish or exhausted from trying. Let me tell you about something Kiki Smith once told me. Now, if you don't know her, Kiki's work is in the collections of MoMA, the Whitney, the Guggenheim, pretty much everywhere. She's had retrospectives at major museums around the world. Time magazine listed her as one of the 100 most influential people. But there were times in her career where she had no money, not even for art supplies. She told me that she raided dumpsters to find cardboard to draw on. And she said something that I will never forget. She said, artists get stopped where they want to get stopped. Mhm. Artists get stopped where they want to get stopped. If you want to work as an artist, you can't get stopped. Not by lack of money, not by lack of recognition, not by lack of encouragement. You find a way. The question isn't whether you're ever going to feel discouraged, because you will. The question is what you're going to do the day after. And then there's the final step. Step 10 is faith. Not religious faith, not blind optimism. Faith as in, I don't know, I will keep taking the next step, even when I can't see the whole staircase. Think about all the stories we've talked about today. Luis storming into that gallery with a roll of butcher paper, not knowing if anyone would buy a single drawing. Me boarding a plane to France and not knowing how I would put bread and cheese on the table. Kiki raiding dumpsters for cardboard, not knowing if the work would ever be seen. James staring at a beam of light in a classroom, not knowing that it would become his life's work. Vic standing tall on his failures because he understood that they're part of the path. Now, this is where artists tend to diverge. Some harden, they brace, they demand proof before they move forward. Others soften, they stay available to what is still forming. Faith doesn't mean certainty. It means remaining in relationship with your work even when it's unfinished, even when you're unsure, even while the outcome is still hidden. That's what working artists do. We don't wait for permission. We don't wait for certainty. We don't wait until we feel ready. We take the next step that we can actually take. And here's what I know after all these years: you can walk on faith alone, but it is so much harder than it needs to be. And if something inside of you is whispering, follow this, you're not imagining it. That's your compass, your orientation, the artist inside of you trying to stay awake. I'm going to tell you more in a moment about how I built the space for artists to do exactly that, to stay awake, supported, and moving forward. But right now, I want to leave you with this. You're not wrong. You're not too late. You're not broken. You are right on time. And your work matters. Now, These steps aren't something you check off once. They're questions you return to again and again as your work evolves. And after working with thousands of artists, here's what I know. You can do this alone, but you don't have to. The Working Artist Academy is a 12-week live guided container. It's structure, it's support, it's real-time coaching. It's practical tools that actually move your work forward inside a space that understands how vulnerable this path can really be. Everything is recorded, so if life happens, you don't fall behind. And yes, we offer AI training, but as an assistant, not as a replacement for your craft or your voice. What artists tell me over and over isn't, thanks, I needed more motivation. No, it's this. It's, I finally know what to focus on. I can talk about my work without freezing. I understand pricing without shame. I'm selling my work like never before. Because the hardest part of being an artist isn't talent, it's carrying it, carrying your doubt, carrying your pricing, your voice, your persistence when you're tired, the failures you're still interpreting as proof. The Academy holds that and more. We recently had our welcome salon, and the moment really stayed with me. I want to show you something. This is the group that's already inside. Real artists from all over the world, different backgrounds, different voices, but they all came for the same reason, to stay close to their work, to not walk this path alone anymore. If you felt something stir in you when you looked at this, that's not an accident. Yes, the welcome salon has already happened, and it was absolutely beautiful. But if you're finding your way here now, it's not too late. We built this to meet you where you are. Everything is recorded, nothing moves without you. And the community is still gathering, still forming, still opening its arms. Doors will close in several hours because this is a live held container. It's not a mass download. But for now, there's still a bit of time. If something inside of you is whispering, follow this, I urge you to listen. You don't need another year circling the same questions, and you don't need to carry it all by yourself. Luis claimed it. I jumped. Kiki kept working. Vic stood on his failures. James followed the light. These weren't acts of solitary heroism. They were acts of faith supported by teachers, mentors, and structure. The work is ready to move. This time you don't have to carry it alone. I'll see you inside the Working Artist Academy.